because the entire thing was Claire making a stupid ass fucking decision and them having to deal with the consequences. I'm hungry. I don't need to eat. I don't need to sleep. And what I really want to do is eat your husband. It's giving me all the feelings of a historical romance, but with really scary scenes and ghosts and really terrifying atmosphere. Hello my loves, welcome back to my channel and welcome to part 2 of the Darcy Coates reading vlog. I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm about to go to the salon to straighten my hair, but I did want to give you this update because I split my Darcy Coates reading video into 2 videos. Part 1 where I read the majority of her backlist, and then part 2 where I complete 2 series. So in this video you're gonna see my full opinion and review, spoiler filled, for the Black Winter series right here and for the Gravedigger series right here. If you've never heard of these series, the Gravedigger series, I think that's what it's called, follows a woman who can speak to ghosts, but she lost her memory at the very beginning of this story. She has no idea what's going on, but she knows that she is being hunted, and she finds refuge in this very, very small town, working for a pastor, I believe, helping him with the ghosts who do not move on. And then it just follows her story of exactly why she is being hunted down and how she helps spirits move to the other side. And the Black Winter series is a post-apocalyptic, I would almost call it romantic suspense. Almost. It's mainly apocalyptic horror with a couple, and book 1 starts with Claire and Doran. I almost forgot his name, and his name is very unique. Claire and Doran, who happen to meet up under circumstances in which Claire is trying to run away because she understands that something is happening. So she's trying to get her family and get to shelter, but unfortunately she crashes in the middle of this apocalypse, and Doran is the one who finds her in the middle of the forest to rescue her, and that begins our series and our story. Now, my intention for this video is to help you find your perfect Darcy Coates book. Darcy Coates has a massive backlist that can be deeply overwhelming, but even though editing me will hate doing this, I'm going to tell her to do it anyway. Here's the actual screen of what Darcy Coates' currently available books are. A lot of the books that you see on Goodreads are short stories that are now part of collections, like the Station 331 series, that is Parasite. And then there's a bunch of short stories. As a reminder, here's the graphic of the short stories that do appear in one of her short story collections. I'll pop that on the screen right here so you can know which one. But without further ado, let's jump on in, and I'm gonna throw you back to when I first started reading the Gravedigger series. It's me with bangs, looking like Edna Mode, because not only do I have bangs, but my hairdresser took off all of my fucking hair. I realized that I deleted a clip for this video because my iPhone was like, you're out of space, you're out of space. And I accidentally deleted the clip where I was telling you about book 1 in the Gravekeeper series. So let me tell you about that. Do you remember this girl's name? No. But we open up with her and she's running through the forest, and she literally has no idea what the fuck is happening, but she knows that she's being chased, and all of her like survival instincts are screaming at her, do not get caught. So she runs into a parish's house and he covers for her. He's like, I haven't seen this woman, you're like, you're in the wrong spot. And he gives her a little cottage that she can live on the church's ground. And while she's there, because she lives in the graveyard, she realizes that she can see and speak to ghosts. And that starts off our adventures, where she is trying to figure out what is going on with the spirits who are trapped in this graveyard, particularly one ghost, the ghost of a woman who is very, very insistent and will not leave her alone because she obviously has unfinished business that our main character is trying to help her with. So the entirety of book 1 is her trying to unravel the mystery of this woman who turns out that she was the person who was murdered by her lover's father because they come from very different class backgrounds, and she was killed. And that's what the entire story is. What I think the strength of this book was with the characters themselves. They all have like this found family feeling. They're such close friends. I love the introduction of a little bit of romance. And one of the female characters, the one who works as the cashier, she has such a strong and distinct personality. She's like a conspiracy theorist, and I adore her, and I love their friendship dynamics. There's also the subplot here of a serial killer who has not been discovered that he is a serial killer. Because she can speak to ghosts, she knows that this person is a serial killer, and he finds out that she knows, and that leads us to our final climax. It was really fun and enjoyable, and I love this one specifically because of the character dynamics. It is definitely a cozy horror. If you like the 90s TV show like Ghost Whisperer, I don't remember that show, I never watched it, but it kind of, I imagine, would have that vibe because that's the general premise of the story. And then I will leave you with the version of me who recorded the clips for book 2 and 3, the remainder of this series. Fair warning, she is heavily medicated and she is full of flu and her voice sounds like it. But me in the future, I'm fine. Listen, I'm getting over the flu. This is the most energy I have, and this is the angle you're gonna get. At least I washed my hair best. So I did finish the Grave Keepers series. That one I was telling you was about the Ghost Whisperer. Not the Ghost Whisperer. The one I was telling you reminded me of the Ghost Whisperer, even though I've never seen that show. I really enjoyed it. Book 2, which I'm not gonna remember the names of anything. Listen, my brain is flu riddled. Anyway, so the second book I really liked. It was really cute in terms of the coziness aspects of it. In this book, we're following Kira and her friends, and my first thought was I was so glad to be back with them because I really enjoy their dynamics, and to me, like, their whole friendship group really lends itself well to the cozy atmosphere of this book. But ultimately, it was pretty forgettable because I'm either delirious or I genuinely just like can't fucking remember what's happening. But I think what was going on is that she is continuing to see ghosts and she's trying to settle into her psychic powers, and she realizes that ghosts can become malevolent and have the ability to physically harm her, and she is trying to help this Shade, who used to be a serial killer. I think you can tell from my tone. I enjoyed it, but I ultimately gave it like 3 stars. It's not very memorable, and it does suffer from sequel, like second book syndrome. So I quickly moved on to the third book, and I'm sorry, it's gonna be the shittiest update you're gonna get throughout this whole video because I'm realizing as I'm speaking, the medication that I took might be a little stronger than I thought it was. Anyway, so the third book I loved so much more because we're getting back to the original plot of the story, where the second book felt like Kira coming into her like ability to connect with the dead, and the third book is remembering that the story started with Kira being hunted down by these people and she has no memories of exactly what happened and what the people are doing. Obviously, I'm gonna get to spoiler territory here, so just like be forewarned now. We find out that the people who are hunting her for a very specific reason, and that's because of her ability to release the dead. And what this organization is doing is they are taking, it's really awful actually, when people die they have like this beautiful cemetery and arrangements with local hospitals to kind of take the bodies and to bury them in their cemetery, and people pay for these plots. But the spirits don't actually ever get to be released. These people who are innocent people never get to go to the afterlife. Instead, they're turned into shades, the malevolent spirits that I mentioned in book 2, and they're trapping them and chaining them to their bodies within the grave, so that the shades are essentially creating power because they're a renewable energy company. That made me laugh, not because it was funny, but just because I found it like so super villain-esque, but also because it was predictable. Like, I knew from the very beginning, as soon as we knew the organization was what they were doing with the shades, especially when Kira mentions like the transfer of energy between herself and the ghosts who become these malevolent spirits. And the sad thing about these shades are that they're not malevolent through like their own unfinished business. Many of these spirits just never got the chance to move on to the afterlife because they were trapped, and of course my girl Kira is out here to save them. While I enjoy this story, there was definitely a couple of subplots that I was like, I'm gonna stick with you here, but I'm wondering if there's another way we could have gotten to this point. But what I really liked is that it was still a horror, but I think it was more of like an action adventure, and like the final half of this book is so quick because Kira and, I don't call him Miles, his name is not Miles, Mason. I don't remember the other girl's name. I'm sorry. She's very fun and I like her a lot, but I just can't remember her name right now. They are being chased by this organization, and it's a lot about her realizing like what role she can have in this, and them running away and trying to find like refuge and hiding in the sewers and hiding in this motel and having to escape people who are chasing them down at the hotel and like being ratted out. And I really love that a lot. Ooh, there's also this scene at the end where they're at Crispin's like manor, and Dane is a character from the first book who of course gets his character arc and comes back in book 3, and Kira is just like full on vengeful, like badass. Y'all are gonna go because I said you're gonna go. I don't care that you don't want to go, you're not allowed to stay. And I just really love that. And I got to the end of the book and I was like, oh no, I didn't want it to be over. So it was very much like a 5-star read for me, because I was like, how dare the book be over and I have to wait until 2024 for the next book in the series. And I definitely will be continuing it. And I think that it's my feelings about this, in fact that this is now like one of my favorite series by Darcy Coates, speaks volumes to the fact that I can do this kind of video where I'm reading so many Darcy Coates books back to back to back to back. And even though it is like mentally exhausting because reading that much horror back to back can be scary, I still am finding so many of these stories really enjoyable. Some of them are misses, but I still have the ability to find books that I'm like, this is really great, and it's one of my favorite series. Something that I've been thinking about as well is that Darcy Coates, people often say that her books are like cozy horror, and I think that's true of some of them, but it's definitely not true of all of them. And I have for sure before fallen into the pit of saying like, Darcy Coates write cozy horror, when in reality there are some books that are just like flat out horror and are not cozy in any way, maybe aside from like the mention of ghosts, but the ghosts themselves aren't necessarily cozy, even if in some cases they are part of the resolution to the main conflict throughout the book. And I think that it's important that I recognize that she writes cozy horror sometimes, but sometimes she's just writing flat out horror. And I want to do a video where I'm kind of like tier ranking Darcy Coates books, because I would have read her entire backlist by that point, or at least most of her backlist by that point, and telling you which of the books are actually cozies, which ones are just flat out horrors, and which ones I think you should read, because there are definitely some wins, but there are also some books that I'm like, I wouldn't recommend that you read that and have that be your impression of Darcy Coates, because maybe it's not her best work, or maybe it's a little bit longer or drier than her works traditionally are. But I am really enjoying this experience so far, and I'm gonna move on to the final 2 series on this list. I say series in quotations because one of them is House of Shadows and House of Secrets. I've already read House of Shadows, and to be honest, I totally forgot that I did, and I was like, whoa, which one was this? Because I had a hard time differentiating between that story and where it goes, and the story of Voices in the Snow and where that goes. And it's like, what's the difference? And then I remembered this one has a stronger romantic element, so this one is a duology, and I only have to read one more book, the second book, in order to finish. I started the audiobook for it and I was like, no, this is not it, because the narrator makes the like our female main character, the woman in this marriage with this man, sound like she's 12 years old. I was like, I'm not into that, so I'm gonna read the ebook for that. Shout out to Everend, formerly Scribd, because they're the reason I'm able to do this video. That sounds like a sponsorship. It's obviously not a sponsorship, just genuinely Darcy Coates removed all of her books from Kindle Unlimited, but most of them you can find on Everend, so I am loving that. And then I only have to finish the other series that I had already started, which is the Voices in the Snow series, not what it's called, just book 1 is Voices in the Snow. We're gonna get to the end of this video, and you're gonna see this in December, and you're gonna know that this video took me so long. I'm literally almost 2 months into trying to read every book that Darcy Coates has ever written. Hello, darlings. Yes, it is very, very dark. I think it's supposed to rain or snow. I don't know, but it sure looks like snow. But hello, it's time for another update. Let me see if I can brighten you a little bit because I lost my little light that goes above you. This might be the best that I can do for you. But hello, besties. It's time for our check-in with our Darcy Coates vlog, which, my gosh, is taking a lot longer than I thought, just because I'm trying not to hate it, which means I need to pace myself and go a little bit slower than I naturally would. But I have finished book 2 in the Voices in the Snow, which still follows Claire, and I'm forgetting her partner's name. I'm never good with names. Anyway, besties, so we pick up right where we left off, right? It's the apocalypse. The Hollows are attacking, and Claire and her partner are in their house. Now, the start of this was really kind of boring, because I was like, what the fuck are they doing? And the answer is nothing. Nothing. They're wandering hallways and going through things and trying to get more supplies in the woods, which that scene would have been exciting, but really nothing happened, and all they did was walk through the woods and get attacked by a hollow. But anyway, our girl Claire has a radio, and somehow, some way, her sister is able to get in touch with her via the radio. How? I don't know. Actually, I don't know how she was able to find her sister's exact frequency, but she was, and her sister is in the house, and she's like, yo, this is really bad. Everyone is kind of dead. Don't leave. If you have safety, if you have shelter, don't try to be a hero. Anyone who's trying to be a hero has just died. And she's like, okay, whatever. But obviously, Claire, she's kind of fucking stupid. A little stupid, honestly. And I'm going to tell you why I feel she's a little bit stupid. But anyway, she and Doran, that's his name, are in the manor, and she hears from her sister again. Her sister's like, oh, Claire, darling, my oxygen thing is failing, and I don't have any oxygen, and oh my gosh, it's goodbye, and please don't come save me. Why? You know your sister, right? Anyway, she wants to say goodbye, but her sister, Claire, is like, I've got to go save my sister. I don't care that it's the apocalypse. I don't care that there are hollows outside the house. I got to go save her. I think you can tell how I feel that Claire is fucking stupid. This whole book felt so long and lengthy because the entire thing was Claire making a stupid ass fucking decision and them having to deal with the consequences. Stupid ass fucking decision number 1. Let's go save my sister. We can drive. What she doesn't think about? The roads are not clear. This happened all at once. All the people who could not escape their cars got stuck in their fucking cars. All the people who were on the road, nobody ever moved their cars. So she can't even drive anywhere. She has to take these detours, and one of the detours ends up taking her to her aunt's house. And she obviously knows that her aunt is like dead, but they go anyway for supplies. And then she sees that the door is boarded over. And even though rationally there's no way her aunt survived, she's still like, my aunt might be in there and I have to save her. And she makes Doran open the cottage door. Her aunt is in there, but guess what? She's a hollow. And that causes Claire a lot of trauma because the hollows are in a lot of pain, but they're very much like just growing extra limbs and like bones are out of them. The people who are hollows are presumed to be dead, but just kind of like zombie-like, although you'll find out later, zombie-like is the emphasis here. And because her aunt is in pain, she makes Doran kill her aunt. And then the whole time after that, she's thinking murderer, 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 which she acknowledges is not fair because Doran did that at her request and her aunt was already gone, was just suffering in her body post-death, as they believe. And they have to deal with the consequence of that. And because they took this detour to her aunt's house instead of leaving right away, they end up getting stuck somewhere, and they have to stay in like this teeny tiny like shack where there are also hollows. And does Claire give up? No. She has to get to her sister's house, whose neighborhood is entirely overrun by hollows, to the point where you can't even like leave your house or make any noise because it attracts them. So she breaks into her sister's house, escapes the hollows. Her sister's house is full of hollows. There's blood all over the floor, but she sees something written in the walls in like very neat handwriting. That's the address for this tower. And in her delusional ass fucking brain, she thinks, in my sister's dying days, she knew that I would come for her. And so she quickly scrawled out an address on the wall for where I could find her. No, the writing on the wall was very neat, which shows that it wasn't frantic. Her sister would have had no reason to believe that her sister was coming for her. So my girl is just living on delusion and optimism that her sister's alive, despite the big ass bloody mess on the floor, and decides that she's gonna go to that address, even though it's in a city completely overrun by hollows, the most dangerous place you could be. So she gets this idea like, oh, we'll take this sailboat on the water and the hollows can't get to us. But there was crew on the sailboat. They didn't think about where the hell the crew went. So they get on that, and like that I will give her is like bad luck and not necessarily a stupid decision, because I think most people in that kind of situation in fictional stories and movies think that if we get to water, we'll be safe. And this is where we learn that some hollows are in fact intelligent, not just kind of mindless, but have the ability to strategize, plan, and use things that they have available to them in order to eat. Because what does a hollow want to do but to eat people? Why? I'll talk about why that's questionable in a moment. Anyway, besties, long story short, they get to the city. It's overrun by hollows. They go to the tower. Guess who's not there? Her sister. Guess who is there? Mr. Crazy Man, who tells us the story of the hollows. Now, this is part of the story with the last like 40% or so that I did more so enjoy, because it felt very much like 10 Cloverfield Lane, which is a movie that I saw that I thought was really, really scary. I saw it when I came out in theaters many, many years ago, and it kind of felt like that, because we have a apocalyptic situation, kind of trapped in a bunker with this man and this couple, and this man may or may not be trusted, but he tells them the story of how the hollows came to be. And here's the story. Nanobots, I think they were a research organization, and one of the team members was creating nanobots designed to help humans to heal faster and more efficiently and to kind of eradicate disease. Now, this man was unwell, and he decided the best way to do that was with human experiments, with no proper testing or research, just under a lot of pressure to try to do this. And while he did this, the nanobots did repair and heal, but they also completely took over the human body and essentially shut down the brain and started to produce more and more and more and more while inside the body, which caused the growth of excess limbs, which caused the growth of like additional bones and just things popping out of people's skins, and the brain couldn't handle that, so the nanobots turned it off. So that's where I got to the point where I'm like, well, the people aren't technically dead then. They're people whose minds have been shut off by nanobots. Their organs and their bodies are still fully functional, but they have not died. So they're not technically zombies, which brings up a very interesting question of ethics, because the way I view it, these people are kind of like in a coma. Their organs are still functioning. They're still able to move around, but their brains are not on as they describe it, although the brain doesn't go on and off. But anyway, that's how it is described. And our main character is talking about how he was part of a different research, but he found out that his coworker was doing this, and he decided that that was freaking crazy, but the coworker went forward with it anyway, and it became this whole situation where the hollows are just people who are infected with overrun nanobots, but they find out that the nanobots do work for certain people, because Doran and Claire, everybody got infected with nanobots, but depending on how far you were, you got less so. So Doran and Claire got a very, very small amount of nanobots, and so did not turn into hollows, but got all the benefits of proper and quick healing. Anyway, besties, that's the boring part. It turns out that Mr. Guy, who says he was the friend of the person who did this, is not the friend of the person who did this, but the person who actually did this. And it's determined that no one should ever know until Claire goes snooping and finds the dead body of the person he claims created this, and realizes that the person that they met is using the name of the person on the floor. So it becomes a quest for survival. The man does not like this. They try to kill him, and then they put Doran into this like experiment thing, because his goal was to do another human experiment to see if the cure would actually work. And the cure really is just to have all the nanobots inside people's bodies explode so that the hollows blow up into like a million different pieces. Again, ethics, because people are not dead, they're just overrun by nanobots. The whole point is that while I enjoyed the ending and I found it quite romantic, so much of this was consequences due to Claire's decision making entirely from an emotional place, which I get having love for your family and wanting to protect your sister, but there was nothing for her to think that her sister was still alive, and quite honestly, it is the apocalypse. So there was minimal chances of her surviving, and every single bad thing that happened in this book was Claire's fault. I know that sounds harsh, but it was. Bad decision after bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. And we ended off with a point that kind of made me cry, because I was like, oh my gosh. So you have this final scene where Doran and Claire are in the elevator, because that's the only safe space they can be in, while the factory building that they're kind of in is being overrun by hollows because the generator went out. And the only way to save themselves was to let the hollows in so that they could kill and eat the person that was trying to kill them with a gun. So they're stuck in the elevator, and Doran's like, there's no escape for us. I have to create a distraction, and the only way for me to do that is for me to sacrifice myself. And while the hollows are focused on me, you need to escape. And Claire's like, you think I'm gonna stand here and let you get eaten by hollows? No. So that scene in the elevator made me really sad, because it was about him saying, I would have loved you. And she's like, and he's like, I know you wouldn't have chosen me in any circumstances, but I loved you. And she's like, I would have always chosen you. I would have married you. And he has a ring in his pocket that he stole from a jewelry store while they were like doing their little town wandering. How he was able to get to a jewelry store, I don't know. But he has a ring in his pocket, and he gives it to her, and they're like, there's no priest to marry us, but like they both know what that means, and they're thinking that's the end, and she's trying to convince Doran not to sacrifice himself when they hear this car and this bus like drives through the lobby, and they run and they get on the bus, and the person on the bus is masked, and they're driving, but you know exactly who is driving the bus. Yes, it's Claire's sister, Beth. And that is how the story ends. As I said, I felt like this story was way too long for what it was. I was deeply frustrated by Claire's decisions, and I found most of the story to be very stop and start, in that we would have high action scenes that were super interesting, and then we'd have lulls that were kind of boring, and this book really could have stood to be like 200 pages shorter. I genuinely think it could have been so much shorter, but my final rating for this book is still like a 2.75 to 3 stars, and I think 2.75 is too harsh, so I'm gonna stick with 3 stars for this story, which moves me into the next book, which I have just started. But in this one, we're immediately picking up where the last book were left off, with Claire and Doran in the van with Claire's sister Beth, and Doran is very much ill because of the experiment that Peter did on him when he was losing his mind. Anyway, he's not doing well. He is struggling, and Claire's sister, you find out, perhaps lost her mind in this apocalypse. Understandable. Very traumatic. And she's like, that guy looks sick. And Claire immediately knows that her sister would get rid of him because she views him as dead weight. So she has to like lie for Doran and make excuses, and her sister doesn't like him, says you can't trust anyone. I'm your family. You should stick with me, and we should leave him behind. And from the summary, I know that this whole story is going to be a lot of tension between Claire and Beth and Doran, and Claire coming to understand that Beth is unwell. That is what I'm doing. I wanted to update you after this first book, because this is the final series that I have to finish. I still have to finish the House of Shadows sequel, but because it is the final series that I have to finish, I just want to go book by book and give you my updates for that. Hello, Bessies. I have now finished the final books in the Black Winter series, which is book 3 and book 4 for you all. So I'm going to try to tell you about this without being long-winded, because I either seem to tell you almost nothing or I tell you too much. So let's get into this. So with book 3, I told you my feelings on book 2. There was a lot of stupid ass decisions, and now we're with Beth and Claire and Doran in book 3. And Doran is very sick because his nanobots, his thanites, I think they call them, have exploded. And that's like excruciating pain for people who have thanites, which is the entire world who has thanites. I got bangs, obviously. And I am not used to them because I got them a few hours ago. Anyway, so we're with Beth and Doran and Claire, and Beth is obviously not herself. She is deeply scarred. It's obvious that she's been attacked. She's very paranoid. She doesn't trust anyone. She's very aggressive and short-tempered. And Claire is struggling with that because that's not who her sister is. Her sister has always been very, very overprotective, but she's never been aggressive, which is what Beth is at this point. Obviously, because like we're in the apocalypse, survival is kind of like dog eat dog. Like people are not out for each other. They're trying to take care of themselves and their individual families, and that has left Beth very jaded. Except Beth also hates Doran, and like Claire knows low-key that if she left Beth and Doran alone, Beth would try to kill him. Legitimately try to kill him. She views Doran as dead weight. So it's them trying to get across the country and trying to get to the research center because of course Doran and Claire have the code to destroy the thanites and end the apocalyptic situation that they are in. This research center is far away, so they're driving, and I'm not going to get too much into it. It literally is just like them fighting hollows and Doran trying to live and Beth and Claire in tension. Like that's the entire book until we get to the scene where they're in the forest and Claire goes to seek Beth out, and we realize just why Beth is so out of character. She's turning into a hollow. That's right, besties. She is turning into a hollow. Her thanites number count is too high, not high enough for her to be fully a hollow, but high enough where it's starting to like duplicate itself and give her extra bones and extra limbs and changing her behavior. Because one of the side effects of thanites and why the hollows are so aggressive, why they're man-eating, we don't know, but why they're so aggressive is because of the like kind of survival system on override that the thanites are within the human body. So Claire sees Beth in the forest, and Beth has massive spines growing out of her back, and she's like, Claire, I'm not human anymore. I'm hungry. I don't need to eat. I don't need to sleep. And what I really want to do is eat your husband. Fiance, I guess at this point. And Claire, of course, is like, I love my sister. Like, that's fine. Doran's understanding. You can live with us. It's okay that you're a hollow. Until, of course, Beth tries to eat Doran. And that gives our main character, Claire, severe PTSD. Doran is completely out of that. At that point, he doesn't realize that Beth has tried to eat him. Beth just kind of disappears, which she knew would happen because, of course, Beth was losing her humanity each and every day, and she was just slowly becoming a hollow. Doran and Claire eventually do get to the Evandale Research Center where they're able to give the code over to the scientists. We have more battle scenes with the hollows, and that's the end of the story. I enjoyed this one more than book 2 because it was less of Claire's stupid ass decisions and more of repercussions of stupid decisions and just like realities of living in a post-apocalyptic world. So that is what book 3 was. I would give this 4 stars. I don't want to tell you too much about it because even though this is a spoiler-filled video, I still want there to be elements of the story that you could enjoy if you decide that you wanted to watch this and you didn't mind being spoiled if you decide to pick the book up. So let's talk about book 4. Book 4 is our return to my true love, which is the romantic suspense elements of these stories, because now it is just Claire and Doran. As it was with book 1, they have given the code to the research center and they're making their way back to their home, which I'm forgetting what was called, making their way back there because they just really want to go home at the end of this and they want to spend the final days of the apocalypse together in their home. So they're driving across the country, and this really is a book that is just a series of action sequences because we have a fight scene with other humans at this camp, which I won't tell you too much about, but just know it's disturbing. But we have the fight scenes in like the mall. They're doing recon to like get fuel because their car is out of fuel in order to drive. It's a lot of fight scenes with the Hollows and a lot of exploration of what are other pockets of human society doing as we've been following Claire, Beth, and Doran. One of my favorite parts is that there is this mall that essentially is turned into a center for children who obviously do not have the ability to fight Hollow and whose parents are no longer with them or who have decided to leave the children in a safe space while they go off to try to survive, because the rules of the mall as it exists is that if you are able to fight and defend yourself, you need to leave, because this is for small children, youth, and elderly people who just do not have the ability to survive in this world, and they don't have the food, the fuel, the heat, the resources to take care of a lot of people. It really has to be exclusively for those who cannot defend themselves. And Claire and Doran run into this, and that's how they end up helping out these people. And they do end up at Blackwood Manor, where, surprise, remember book 1? Of course you don't, because I read that before this video. But if you're watching this video, I'm assuming you've read book 1 or you have an interest in the series. But in book 1, Doran's mom was a Hollow, and she was a Hollow who had control over the servants who also turned into Hollows. And Claire kills Doran's mom in the first book, but they come back and guess who's not dead? It's Doran's mom, because she is a Hollow because she's full of Thanites. And even though Claire thought she killed her because obviously the injury she sustained, people would not be able to survive, but because she's a Hollow, she did survive it. And she was able to recover and heal herself fast enough that she lived. And now she's pissed. She's like, this is my son. He's gonna stay here with me, and I'm gonna skin you alive. So it's now about them trying to survive in a home where it's overrun by Hollows. It was just the servants, but Doran's mom was going and recruiting other Hollows in the forest, and she's determined to keep her son with him in the house. She was, by the way, very abusive and controlling and manipulative towards Doran, and he has a lot of trauma around that. And the fact that she's back in Hollow form, we're back in the home where you think everything's gonna be okay, but it's not, because now they're trying to survive against this woman who is very much determined to kill Claire, and they are outnumbered in every way possible. But good for them that it's only a few days until the research center detonates the Thanites in people and they're able to survive. They do get rescued by the people from the research center who come out and they get them, and they go off and live in a new town and happy settlement, and it's happily ever after. I love this one a lot just because of all of the action scenes. It felt fully immersive, and this was the first time where I really felt like this series would make such a good like TV show, just because it's so much fun, and the way like you visualize it and how many scenes there are, I can just see that being individual episodes, especially the episode that would be with Beth and like the discovery of what Beth is. This would just be such a good TV show. And while I did give the final book 4.5 stars and I really did love it, ultimately I was so sad that the series was over, because I don't feel like the series needed to be longer than what it was. I just loved Claire and Doran so much that it made me upset that we were never going to be with them. Which reminds me, Claire and Doran remind me so much of the 2 main characters in the other series I was reading. Those 2 remind me of them, except that Claire is different than the Ghost Whisperer character in the Gravedigger series. But if you love like that cozy, loving relationship, I think that you would also enjoy this Black Winter series, because there's a lot of overlaps, and they meet a character in here. I want to say her name is Hex in the Black Winter series, and Hex 100% through and through reminds me of the best friend in the Gravedigger series, and they also have in common that they were cashiers. And I'm like, is this that character in an alternate universe in this story? Because it sure feels like it is. But I really adored this series, and I've had so much fun reading Darcy Coates' entire backlist. Which reminds me, as I was editing this video and looking at the graphics, I realized that I forgot a series. I read House of Shadows a couple of years ago, and House of Secrets was on the TBR for this video, and I completely forgot. So I have fixed my mistake, and I am now in the middle of the House of Secrets series. One of the issues that I had with Black Winter is that it had been so long since I had read the first book that I was like, who am I with? Who are these people? What's happening? And that exactly how it felt with House of Secrets, because it had been so long since I read House of Shadow. I was like, who are these people? What happened? And then I slowly remember, this is Darcy Coates' historical horror, heavy on the romance as well. And as soon as we were back with them, I was just like pulled right back into the world, and I was like, that's right, I know you too, and I like you too. The thing that's difficult here is that it's a historical horror. Really, it's heavy on the romance and the pining and the does my husband love me or does he not love me. And in this one, we open up with our two characters who are now living with our main female character's father, because the house that they were in burned out. Listen, I can't tell you what happened in book 1. Like, I could, but this isn't a review of book 1. We're jumping right into book 2. So they're living there, and then Joseph, our main character, he gets a letter from his uncle and his niece saying that she has been possessed by the Grimlock, this demonic fantasy creature that has led to his family having immense amounts of money over the generations. But of course, it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice for the family, and they're cursed, and they're not able to break away from it because of a deal that was made something like 1,000 years ago. Like, this family has been cursed for many, many, many generations. So they thought that they had escaped it and they had destroyed the Grimlock, but no, the Grimlock had possessed little 13-year-old Elise, and Elise was acting wild. And the thing is, if the Grimlock isn't destroyed, every future generation of this family will also be cursed. So Joseph goes back to this household, this other estate that they own, because they're hella rich. They own property all over England, like fallen millionaires, like billionaires. So he goes over there to try to rescue his niece, and of course his wife follows him. She's like, I'm not sitting here while you go die. So they go and do that. And what's really fun and interesting about this story is just how like eerie it is. If you're someone who loves atmosphere and you like historical fiction, this is a lot of fun. It's giving me all the feelings of a historical romance, but with really scary scenes and ghosts and really terrifying atmosphere. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm 50% of the way through, and I'm gonna update you all with the ending of this video and my final thoughts on House of Secrets. Sorry for the terrible lighting, but it is 8 a.m. The rest of the house is sleeping, and this is what I'm working with. So I just wanted to give you the update that I'm about 50 or 60 pages away from the ending of House of Secrets. And while I am enjoying it, and I'm really enjoying the atmosphere that Darcy Coates is building, and there was a plot twist that really took me by surprise, and because this is a spoiler-filled vlog, I'm going to tell you the plot twist is that the reason that Joseph is pulling away from, I'm literally reading this book right now, and I forgot the female character's name. Sophie? I can't believe I remembered that. Anyway, Sophie, the reason that Joseph is pulling away from Sophie is because he is dying when he was attacked by the Grimlock in book 1, which I totally forgot happened, by the way. It cursed him, and he's dying, and all of the scars that he got from the Grimlock actually are spreading and leaving ice in his body, and like, it's his final days, and Sophie is definitely not going to stand for that. And I'm loving the atmosphere, as I was saying, because it just has this like feeling of dread throughout the entire story. With that said, I don't feel like a lot is happening plot-wise. Like, the main plot is them trying to save Elise and them trying to save Joseph, and that is progressing, although Joseph is very much resigned to die. The thing that I'm wondering is, why write a sequel? Like, I enjoy it, but I don't feel like the sequel is necessary. Like, what is it adding to the story? And at some point, did Darcy Coates have intention to make this a longer series than a duology? Because this is a rather short book for Darcy Coates. This book is 220, and usually her books go over the 400-page mark. So those are my thoughts as I approach the ending of this book. Obviously, I'm not home. I did not mention that. I'm not home. Hello, I'm in my sister's house. So those are my thoughts, and I'm going to update you hopefully like 20 minutes or so when I finish this, because it is 8 a.m. on the day that you are watching this. It is Saturday, December 23rd, and I need this to go up at 11:30. I don't have hopes that that will actually happen though, because exporting and uploading takes a long time. This is a very awkward angle, but I do want to go ahead and update you that I did finish House of Secrets and I really enjoyed it in terms of where it ended up and the characters. I'm ultimately giving this 3 stars, and I want to tell you more about what worked for me and what didn't work for me. Ultimately, I did not understand why this book was written, which is not like an insult. I enjoyed the book. I was happy to be back with Sophie and Joseph. I thought that they were a very cute couple, and as I mentioned, there's a plot twist in here that I was like, what? Did not see that coming. I don't know if it added anything to Sophie and Joseph's story. I think it was just a way to tie up loose ends, which, to be fair, could have been tied up if book 1 had just ended without the little note that perhaps something was wrong with Elise. Like, Elise could have just been fine and they could have escaped, and that could have been the end of the Grimlock. I enjoyed that this was more of a mix of like paranormal and fantasy and historical, which is something very unique for Darcy Coates, and I continue to be impressed by her ability to write so many different like varieties of horror and mystery and even like romantic stories. I think she's such a talented writer, and I did really enjoy this story, specifically the characters. And there's an end scene here where, of course, the Grimlock is back and it is attacking. It's out for vengeance, and we get reintroduced to a character that I deeply disliked, Rose. Rose is Joseph's aunt. I believe she was Garrett's wife and the mother of Elise. And Rose, in book 1, I hate to mention this series, but just for reference, you can get the point of like what I'm talking about, very much gave me Bellatrix. And each and every time I get to that, I'm like, it's annoying. It's a lot of, my lord, can I save you? And I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. What I did love about that final scene is that instead of like Sophie or Joseph or Garrett getting revenge, the person who got revenge and ultimately destroyed the Grimlock was Elise. Little 13-year-old Elise was like, I'm gonna come for you. And I love that. I don't know if it's odd to say like it's a good for her moment, but she was being possessed by this like demonic entity for a long time, and it felt suitable to me that something that had tortured her like spiritually and emotionally and literally took control of herself and her body, like she fell into a chasm and snapped her spine. It felt suiting to me that she would be the one to kill the Grimlock, and I love that. I also really loved the development of Miss Bishop throughout the story. Miss Bishop is a ghost. She was Joseph's aunt through like marriage. I love that Darcy incorporates her classic touch here where the ghosts have some kind of element in terms of them saving the characters or them like helping the characters in some way. And I did really enjoy this story. I think the strength of this book with a lot of the books is definitely the atmosphere, the characters. The writing itself is quite beautiful, and the world building in here was great because this is where we actually have to establish lore and fantastical elements outside of just like there are ghosts. It's not just there are ghosts, there are demons with powers, with the ability to change weather and systems, and like that was really interesting. I'm gonna leave this little review here with a note that if you really enjoyed books like Gallant or These Fleeting Shadows and you like Darcy Coates, I would consider this series a lighter version of both of them. There are elements of both books within here in terms of themes, plot points, beats, tone, things like that I think that you could enjoy if you're looking for another book that could potentially fill that gap. But anyway, besties, now I do have to go because I have to edit this video so that you can see it hopefully later this morning. I hope that you enjoyed this Darcy Coates video. As always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you being here, and I'm gonna see you with my next video. Bye.